Okay, thank you.
Will you do that so that the...
Right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 23rd of February Strategy and Policy Committee meeting. Welcome to members of the public, media who worship the Mayor, and elected members and staff. Right, first item is apologies. I've got apologies from Councillor McPherson for lateness, and being notified from Councillor Green and Pascoe that they have to leave. Oh, Councillor Pascoe has to leave at 4:45, and Councillor Green approximately 5,
Why, Rob?
5 p.m.
Another meeting, Gary. None of my business, Rob.
And are there any other apologies?
I don't have to go and pick up any
Councillor
kids.
Gallagher for
Is
lateness.
for lateness, and I also have to leave at 5.
Right, thank you, Councillor. So those apologies, I'll move that those apologies be received. I have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Young. All those in favour? Are there any against? That's carried. Right, number 2, confirmation of the agenda. There are no changes proposed, and no extra information has been circulated for the agenda. So with that, I'll move the agenda be received. Seconded by Councillor Tooman. All those in favour? Are there any against? That's carried. Are there any declarations of interest? No, and I've been advised there's no speakers to the public forum today. So we will move straight to item 5. On page 5, the Strategy and Policy open minutes of 8th of December.
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Are there any questions for clarification on the minutes or for correction on the minutes? I'm happy to second that. There being none, I will. That's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate? All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 6, page 21, the Heritage Plan and Historical Heritage Fund Guidelines, and we welcome Luke to the table. And before we go to you, Luke, I'm going to go to the Deputy Mayor as Chair of the Heritage Advisory Panel before we go to Luke and Alice. So you're Deputy?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this item today. I would like to thank the panel, and the panel is on page 21 of the document. It's been an expert panel in terms of those from the outside that have contributed their time to us. Experts as heritage architects, heritage planning, from Waikato Tainui, Waikato Property Council, and of course Councillor Gallagher, who has just arrived. So thank you, Martin, for your contribution to that. I'd also like to acknowledge the contribution of Te Hao Te Whenua o Kurikiri Roa. It is a trust of 5 hapu, and they made a considerable effort to participate in the policy. To our staff, Alice and Mark and Luke, thank you for the work. It's the culmination of over 18 months of work, and I think it reflects the responsibility we have as councillors in terms of heritage. There are 5 key goals: identification, protection, sustainability and use, and management and implementation plan. We cannot, as a council, walk away from our responsibilities and our commitment to heritage. As a council, we are guided by the Reserves Management Act, Heritage New Zealand Pohiri Taonga Act, the Waikato River Settlement Act, and the Reserves Act. And I ask that councillors give their support today to both the Heritage Plan and the Incentive Fund for adoption by Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Right, Luke and Alice, you're in the hot seat, so questions of staff on the report. Councillor Pascoe?
Yes, I've got just a couple of, before I ask the questions, I notice on paragraph 7 there's only 4 of the key goals set out. I think there's one missing.
Yeah, that's correct. There's one of the key goals there from the plan, which is promotion which is missing from that.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's an omission and a correction needs to be noted.
And just the other one that just concerns me a little bit, in the brochure, from pages 73 onwards, I wonder if somebody could go.
Frankton.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Somebody could go through that there are. Hang on, where are we?
Is that attachment 1 you mean, Rob?
No, I think I'm talking about the wrong report there. I'll take that comment back. I think it's the Frankton one. The area that kind of concerns me is around 39, that we're talking about funding through existing operational budgets. It would be useful for us as councillors to have some metrics there in terms of what that budget is, the budget to produce, the staff time costs involved in this, and what the expectation. I know that there will be. It'll be a as come as basis in terms of applications, and my recollection in the long-term plan is that we allocated 100,000 into the fund, which may in fact all get used up by one application. So it would be useful to have some idea as to whether there's any applications pending,
Yep.
And also what the organisation anticipates will be the operating costs of running the heritage plan in terms of staff time and printing the brochure and so forth.
Yeah. So I think just for clarity, I think you're talking about there's 2 separate sort of cost issues. I think one, if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just want to understand the question. So number one, there's some queries you've got around the decision made by council and the LTP to fund $100,000 for heritage grants, and I could talk to that. And the second one, I think your question's around how much does it cost to produce the document?
As well as there'd be ongoing staff time allocated to
right.
this in terms of the processing applications. And
so in terms of the costs to date, the estimate that we've got, so in terms of external costs over the production of the document to this point in time is approximately $8,100. In terms of the internal staff costs, and I suppose what I need to caveat this response with is that there's an ongoing piece of work. So there's a piece of work that's underway at the moment in our corporate group about providing an accurate measurement by how we monetise internal staff costs for projects where council has resolved and given us a direction to prepare a document. So as an interim basis, we're using a costing rate of $100 an hour. So the figure I'm giving you now may change as a result of the way in which we measure our internal costs. But on that basis, it's about since the council resolved to prepare a heritage plan in November 2013, it's approximately $83,000 of staff time since November 2013.
2013.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Now, in terms of ongoing costs, in terms of and then your separate question around the Heritage Fund, that's a decision that council made when they were contemplating the long-term plan, and there was a resolution that a Heritage Fund be established and funded from 2017 at $100,000 per annum within the 10-year period. Now, there is no pending applications because we're waiting till we get through to this process before we were able to have any surety that it was something that we could actually give effect to as a decision. So, and the guidelines there indicate the criteria by which we would consider applications. We look at calling for applications twice a year, and that's based on research analysis that we've done of other places in New Zealand where they've got similar funds. And in terms of a cost to assess an application to that fund, staff costs, we'd see that at around between $5,000 and $6,000 of staff time of internal costs. And then every time, if we were to then asked the Heritage Panel to provide some peer review of that. Every time they meet, it costs about $2,000 of external costs.
Right, so the mechanism would be that if in one, the long-term plan approved $100,000 per year, or was it a per
annum within the 10-year plan period?
Within the 10-year plan period,
That's
starting
correct.
2017.
Starting in 2017.
So the mechanism would be that if applications, and of course they have to come back to council for approval.
That's correct.
So the mechanism would be that if in 1 year that we exceeded $100,000, then any payments would appear on the risks and opportunities as an amount
Look,
over and above that budget.
my understanding is that that money is capped at $100,000. We wouldn't be putting up anything to council to exceed that amount, unless there was an additional resolution from council that lifted that fiscal envelope. But basically, that $100,000, that's the cap. That's a cap set by council.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mallett?
Thank you. Just on paragraph 31, third bullet point, said consultation was undertaken with local people, iwi and communities. What are those three things? What are those three things?
Well, basically the document was exhibited on our website. People could make submissions directly to us. We had a public launch at the Arts Post last year after council resolved to release a draft of the document, and we also had a separate meeting with THWARC, the local iwi group that council works with around cultural engagement.
Okay, are local people, and I'm not splitting hairs here, but do local people different than communities? Are local people different than communities? Or is it just a poorly worded?
Look, I think they can be read in conjunction. We're talking about the local people in terms of individuals making submission, or communities as in communities of interest who thought it was worth going to the opening of and the launch of the document at the museum.
Okay. 32, the last sentence, at the October hui attended by Councillor Chesterman and staff, the trust, they verbally endorsed the heritage plan. Is that saying the trust in the first sentence endorsed the heritage plan?
Yes, that's correct. So
okay. That's miswritten then. So the trust, they verbally endorsed the heritage plan. Is that what it's supposed to be? The trust endorsed the heritage plan, is that what it's saying?
yes, there was a second hui held in October with the trust, and that's when they endorsed the
okay, but that
there's a typo.
Is that error in there? Yeah, okay. On page 28, end of the sort of 3/4 of the way through the first paragraph, the history of Hamilton prologue. There were priceless artefacts that were recovered from within the city. There were priceless artefacts recovered from within the city. What were they, and what was done with them?
I'm sorry, Chair, Councillor, I cannot specifically identify those artefacts. A lot of artefacts, of course, are held in the museum. This prologue is a snapshot of the prologue that was also used in the celebrations for the Hamilton 150 years. And it is just a broad brush explanation of
But it is part of this report, and it should be relevant to the report.
Well, it is, and it still is. The artefacts that are being talked about probably are many, and I just cannot list those. But the museum does, and the library does hold.
So what would happen to them? They would be put in a safe storage place and documented and
yeah, some of them are. Some of them may have been transported to other places. You know, just recently we've had instances of taonga turning up in England and being auctioned off. But you know, we have quite a rich collection here within the museum and the library.
Do we have a process for trying to find the owner, or you know, anyone attached to it?
I can't answer that. I'm not aware of that.
The museums and the libraries, historians and archivists manage that. I think the other thing to also note is that in addition to the museum and libraries, Waikato Tainui also hold a number of the artefacts that are found in Waikato too.
What's the law around finding those sort of things? I mean, if you find some gold in the bottom of this ocean, I don't know who owns it, but there'll be some sort of law. What's the law around these things?
So there's a discovery requirement under the Heritage Act that if you do discover any item, tonga or human remains, you are, in particular human remains, you're required to advise the police, the council and Heritage New Zealand and potentially also the local iwi. If it's tonga, or a artefact from a early European settlement, Heritage New Zealand is required to be contacted, and that's all set out in the Heritage Act.
And we'd have followed all that?
Sorry, I didn't.
We would have followed those procedures?
Well,
In relation to council works, like if we were to, yeah.
Yes, we
Well,
do.
yeah, well, this tells us we found a whole lot of
Yeah.
these things, and
Well, no.
what have we done with them?
Well,
Well,
this doesn't.
Not we.
Sorry, councillor. This is a general snapshot of Hamilton's heritage. So it's not we in terms of council. It's we in
Okay.
terms of the community over a period of time of settlement since some 700 years ago.
Ah, okay, all right. On page 32, second paragraph, the purpose of this plan is to provide a holistic approach to heritage protection in collaboration with owners. Can you describe what you mean by collaboration? And I've raised this one in the past. It's about private property rights and who has the final
Yes.
say.
Yep, so
Luke, try not to go round and round in circles like we normally do.
I'm trying to answer your question,
Okay.
councillor. So in terms of the protection of private property rights for anything that's listed as a heritage item, only this council can make a decision around whether or not something is a heritage item. So if something becomes, we have a list of heritage buildings in a district plan. If someone else comes to us and says, we think there's another structure that's not on that list and it should be a heritage item, we need to look at it. If we think it's got some validity as a heritage item, we'll get that tested, peer reviewed. We can use the heritage panel, but ultimately any protection from a district plan point of view can only be made by this council. The staff can't make a decision to put a heritage protection on a building without the authority of council.
If my neighbour says your house is a heritage item, they come to the council and say, the Mallett's house on River Road is a heritage item.
Yeah.
So do I. But if they did, heaven forbid, and that meant that I, as the owner of the building, was suddenly under a whole lot of requirements in terms of what I can do when I want to renovate it or sell it or subdivide it, and I say, no, I don't want it to be on the register. What happens?
Well, I mean, once again, only the council can
Yeah,
make
no,
a decision.
okay.
So we would consult with those landowners to say, hey,
And I've just told you, I've said no.
Yeah, well, we would then make a determination whether or not we'd need to still proceed to explore whether or not it needs to be listed and bring a report to council.
And so what, long story short, you're saying if council by majority decides it should be a heritage item, despite my, as the owner of the property, disagreement with that, what would happen?
I can't predict that. That's a
It's a
decision for council.
And if council has made that decision, what happens?
Then we go through a first schedule process. So then that actually goes into a formal RMA. It doesn't automatically get scheduled. It gets notified in the district plan. That landowner and anyone else has an ability to make a submission on that proposed heritage designation, and then if it goes through a hearing process and then it's confirmed again, they can appeal that to court. So there's multiple touch points for that person.
And at each of those steps, if Gary Mallett's saying, no, I don't want it to be a heritage thing, and goes through my submissions and all that sort of stuff, ultimately the thing, you get stripped of your property rights.
Well, I don't know if it's stripped of your property rights. Once again, it depends on the nature of the building.
Property rights being your right to subdivide your property or repaint it or change the nature of the outside of your house.
Those
Just answer it straight.
Yeah, those things that you could continue to do.
He
Those
is
things.
trying, councillor Mallett, if you give him a chance.
Having
It's a very simple question.
Yeah, and I'm trying to answer it. The heritage scheduling doesn't preclude you from doing things like painting your building, from extending your building, from even demolishing your building. You would have known recently, we've had a case of Euphrasia House. It was a building that was a heritage item. It went through a resource consent process and the demolition was granted. So the heritage, any heritage designation doesn't necessarily preclude you from doing lots of things to your property.
But the heritage, it could preclude you from demolishing your property, could preclude you from changing it significantly.
It could do.
Okay, irrespective of the owner's wishes.
Well,
And I know it goes through step 1 and step 2 and step 3, and we talk to the owner and we try and get win-win
yes,
resolutions.
yes,
All it's
yes,
Karen.
yes.
Okay, so it breaches your property rights in that case.
Luke,
I think Councillor, the manager explained that there are a number of property rights there, but there are various avenues that the owner of the property would explore. They objected to it, but ultimately, if at the end of all that process a decision is made, then the property is subject to.
But this property owner hasn't committed a crime. It's not like going through a court.
yeah.
This property owner happens to own some property, and because it happens to be, someone decides it's got some features that someone else doesn't want to see changed, that property owner can have that right taken away from him, can't he?
Potentially.
Not potentially, he can.
Well,
I think
yes.
The answer's not potentially, it can be, yep.
The other point to make, I think, is that council has an obligations under the statutory requirements to protect heritage under the Resource Management Act. And as Luke has said, that if an item is highlighted to council that someone thinks should be protected, there is a rigorous process that goes through before it gets to that end result.
With all due
So that's
respect, I don't care
identified
how
under-
rigorous the process is, I don't think there should be any process which enables
But I
that to
think
happen.
that's,
But that's the law,
with
and
respect,
I'm
I
just,
think
I'm just
that's
wanting
a
clarity.
national
It's legislation.
legislative
Yeah.
process.
All right, thank you. Page 33. Is that, there's a Hamilton RC on that photo. That's a Hamilton Rowing Club, eh?
Yes, it is. Yes.
That's still there?
No.
No.
It's a historical
What's
photo.
there now?
There's a different structure there now, Councillor Miller. It's
Very.
well, I think it's just called it's a very big building. It's where the current rowing sheds are for the Hamilton Rowing Club. And
So there's
that,
the ferry bank, which is the reception thing, and
yeah,
then there's the...
and then there's a rowing club underneath
Underneath
it.
Is that underneath that, is
That's,
it?
the rowing club's under. Well, they've got a gymnasium. Like, so you've got the Kerr and Ladbroke sort of function centre, and there's a gymnasium that the club uses, and underneath that is where the boat sheds are.
Okay, thank you. No, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the committee? No, there are, Councillor Gallagher?
No, I just have a comment when you...
Oh, okay, so, Deputy Mayor, are you going to move
Yes, I
this
will.
item?
Thank you.
And is there a seconder for this
Yes,
item?
I second it.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. And Deputy Mayor, I'll come to you first to speak. Are you moving the staff recommendation on page 22?
I have already spoken, Chair, and I'm happy with those comments. I'm happy with the comments from our professional staff, and this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher, I'll go to you next. If you'd like
I
to.
just want to acknowledge the external, our staff obviously, acknowledge them, and particularly the external, including Councillor Livingston, external members of the panel. I think they have brought a great range of skills, and I think the appointment of the Deputy Mayor to chair this panel was a very wise and astute one, in that the Deputy Mayor and I always don't agree, but I have to say in this area he's very much across a lot of the issues. Does this plan in itself guarantee that we won't have the sad, poignant sight of the Deputy Mayor at 6 o'clock in the morning after he's read the Waikato Times that a historic chapel adjacent to Steel Park is being demolished? We won't have the sad and poignant sight of the Deputy Mayor running around to see if he can save it.
Very poignant.
I'm hopeful, but I'm not too hopeful, because I think that action and that event was quite symbolic of just how easy it is. Will we ever emulate the example of the best planned city in the world, Paris? Napoleon planning structure? No. Can we sort of save at 5 minutes to midnight a little bit of what's left, and also can we develop through this plan a greater awareness of our pre-European, of our Maori settlement? You know, Hamilton is not, we celebrated 150 years the other year. Well, actually, in reality, we need to be thinking in our own heads that we celebrate 700 to 800 years of human habitation. That's the real story, and through natural heritage prior to that. This, however, I believe is a good beginning, and will the $100,000 fund be the be-end and end-all, but humble when you compare with the other great cities of the world? No, but it's a start. It's a start. Moving forward, is it absolutely crucial that we actually get good relationships with groups like the Property Council, the excellent Wintec Council in terms of how they developed the atrium over there. Encourage particularly our church communities to be more mindful of the historic heritage in the city and work in a more collaborative way with them and other groups, then yes. So in summary, I want to absolutely thank the panel, thank the chair, thank the staff. This is a good beginning, hopefully, where our city has a better record in these areas.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further speakers? There being none, that's been... Councillor King?
Our district plan provides levels of protection for heritage buildings and protected trees. That's already in place. Work on these items generally require planning consent, which needs to be supported by relevant expert reports. This can even affect the fences when in protected areas, and changes and repairs can cost thousands of dollars. These, along with the planning consent, costs the applicant money that could be better spent on protecting the item under discussion. Do we want to be in a situation where it's so costly to protect or enhance these heritage buildings or trees that the chosen alternative could be to let the building, fence or the tree fall into a state of disrepair, where it's no longer worth keeping it and it falls down of its own accord? This has happened in different areas around the world. If we are keen on protecting our heritage, what we should be doing is removing red tape, not adding to it. This could mean that council arborist crews advise on how to prune and look after our trees at no charge, rather than the person who is responsible for the tree having to get an independent report and a resource consent. If a resource consent is required to keep control, then it should be at no charge. Why should council force our residents who live in heritage buildings a museum for the delight of the public at the cost of their owner? Many of the buildings under consideration have outlived their usefulness. They cannot be adopted for modern utilities like air conditioning. There are earthquake risks and the potential death threats. It's impractical to adopt them for people who are physically impaired. In most cases, it is only the face of the building that you'd want to keep. But do we really want facades in front of glass plate buildings that tower above them? People need to understand that protecting these items costs money. It costs the person who owns the building the money. It may be to the owner through the planning process or the lack of opportunities to redevelop, or when they're unable to find a tenant because the building's just impractical. In my view, these costs are unacceptable in the majority of cases. Why are we creating more red tape? Plans which make it harder to grow and prosper our city. In life, what everybody requires is certainty. This plan does not give certainty for property owners or for the public.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McPherson.
Thanks. Councillor King's inspired me to speak, and I actually agree with some of his points in relation to the red tape in situations like this and the requirement that council or council rules would put on private owners. I think it's absolutely true that the whole planning industry, not just our planners in particular, the whole planning industry doesn't recognise the costs that I wouldn't necessarily call it red tape, some of it certainly is, but not all of it is. Some of them are very good rules and regulations, but they inevitably put costs on private individuals and on small community organisations, not just private individuals, and on small companies as well, with little recognition that that can sometimes be a killer for people. I think that we need to take some of Councillor King's points on board, those of us who do support Heritage Fund like this, and say how can we help. For instance, the example of the council arborists with protected trees is quite a good one. We should not be saying it's all back on the owner of the property that the tree happens to sit on. The tree is there and is protected to benefit the whole community, so the whole community needs to share, at least in the bureaucratic costs that are involved in making changes, improvements, protection or whatever. And I don't think we do enough of that. I think we adopt a typical planning industry attitude. The costs are all on the applicant. Well, the costs should not be all on the applicant. They should be shared with the community. I don't think we've got that quite right yet. I do think that this Heritage Fund is a start, but it's a hell of a small start actually. And it's clear that you're not going to use this fund for actually the building work type costs. It can only be used for the application costs and things like that, but it's not enough to do that. If we expect people to buy in, which is what we want, to our heritage policies, then we need to actually enable that to happen, and we haven't done enough of that yet, either in a regulatory fashion or in a financial fashion. So I think this is a good start. It's been a long overdue start. Councillor Chesterman and I hung out about 9 years ago, I think, to try and preserve a certain building on the corner that was on the corner over in Hamilton East against council planners at the time. And I actually spoke in an Environment Court hearing against the council on that. And I think this is the culmination of some of the efforts that started back then and earlier. But I don't think we've got the process quite right. I think we're putting, as I said, too much back on the individual applicants in this case, whether they be private or public. And I think we need to do more work in that area.
Are there any further speakers? No. Okay, so that's been moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Gallagher. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any against?
Councillors Mallet, Green and King dissenting.
Thank you. Right, thank you, Luke and Alice. Well, you're staying, aren't you? Oh no, you've been... Great. So we're on to item 7, page 63. And this is the Frankton Neighbourhood Plan that's been out for consultation. So, as chair of the working group, I just want to make a couple of comments and thank the members of the working group. The elected members were Her Worship the Mayor and Councillor Gallagher and myself. And we also had Terry Forlong on the working group, Vino Beaker and Mark Wasung. We also had a focus group made up of some external members. Oh, and pardon me, Barry Lafferty is also, I acknowledge you, Barry, in the audience, and Barry is the author of a very popular Frankton book, and I would say he would be the primary person to go to for everything Frankton, so I acknowledge your attendance today, Barry. So just over to staff now for questions.
Thank you, Councillor Leary. Look, I'll take the report as read, and essentially the purpose of the report is to report back on the findings of the consultation in accordance with an earlier resolution of council, of this committee, to exhibit the draft Frankton Neighbourhood Plan, which in itself was an item on the S&P work agenda, and the resolution of this committee to prepare that work dates back from August 2014. So the work that we've been doing is to give effect to those resolutions and to report back to you today the outcomes of the consultation and seeking the committee's adoption of the document. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Luke. And you've got some just suggested changes from on page 70 of the agenda. I noticed some of them don't quite line up with the numbers on the plan.
Sorry, Angela, what numbers are you talking about?
I think it's just because it's in an A3 format, that was all. Like the first, well, technically, the first one says on page number 2, but I suppose the introduction's technically on page number 3, but it's just because it's in A3 form, so I'm sure we'll easily follow along. Okay, so questions of staff. Councillor Forsyth and then Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. Thanks for a great plan. I really enjoyed reading it. It's very exciting. Obviously a lot of work from a lot of people has gone into bringing this far. I just sort of looked at the plan more through a cycling or biking lens, and I do have a question, but also I have some suggested changes, just subtle changes to some wording, but wording that would fit in within the theme and context of what we're trying to do with our biking plan. So what's the appropriate time to talk about that, Madam Chair?
Well, you could, what page would it be on? Would it be on the bike, the connection, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the
so that's page, my agenda's actually not.
That's page 18.
Page 18, 19
yeah.
of the actual plan.
Yeah.
So you can talk about, if you want to suggest those now, and staff can note those down, and then if it all goes through with the committee's happy,
yeah,
we
if
can.
I may, yes.
Yep, yep.
Thanks. So the
Sorry, can I, just a point of clarity.
Yeah.
My thing only has, I got it. Sorry, I'm not going to say it's only got odd numbers, but the even numbers are on the spine, aren't they? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the first word is to replace in the second paragraph above the word outcomes. Replace cycling with biking. There'll be biking connections rather than cycling.
So that we would read, there are high traffic volumes that intersect Frankton which impact on the quality of pedestrian and
biking.
Yeah.
And with the biking plan, we specifically chose the word biking. We spent a lot of time agonising over the merits of either word and decided biking was the word we wanted to reflect. And then if we come down to outcomes, Frankton is easily accessible for pedestrians and people on bikes. I also wondered if it would be, I'd like to suggest that we change the photo of the underpass, because that, from what I can understand, I'd like that, perhaps the GM can confirm that for me, but that's no longer going to be an option for the Western Rail Trail, so I'd like something that's
Can you give us a page number?
It's 19, and she's still on 18 and 19.
Page 18.
What page are we on?
18 and 19. Of the plan, they're not marked within the agenda. So is that the artist's impression of the Western Rail Trail, the big image down
That's
there?
actually, my understanding of that's actually not going to happen. So I think it's more appropriate that we have something that is going to happen rather than not. And same page, just Frankton Heritage Bike Loop. It's great to have the word bike in there. Develop a bike-friendly circuit. Again, just trying to keep the language similar. the words that we've used a lot in the biking plan are attractive for people on bikes. It's not necessarily the friendly, well, it is the friendliness of it, but it is also about being attractive and really providing an environment that people on bikes really want to engage with. It's a presumption that it will be friendly, otherwise bikers won't be able to get there. And just wondered what the route enhancement features meant. What does that, in the same sentence, and include history storyboards, understand that, and route enhancement features. Not sure what that means.
I think that's just really part and parcel of waymarking that journey from the Western Rail Trail into Frankton. So whether that's planting or, like you say, storyboards.
Or signage, or to show that there's a connection from the Western Rail Trail into Franklin.
Changing materials or paving.
Okay, I just didn't think that was clear. That was all. Yes.
Would you like us to change that wording? Is that something you want to change?
Just as long as it's clear what it is that you mean, I think.
Yep.
I don't know, it might just be me. I don't know whether other councillors have the same interpretation. Thank you. And look, just again, it's with the biking theme. If we go to page 22 and then drop down to complete Western Rail Trail, so that little paragraph there, provide an off-road biking connection from southwest suburbs to the central city, Hamilton Lake and stadiums. It will run alongside the railway track through Frankton. So is this something that we're describing now, completing the Western Rail Trail, or is that when I went back to have a look at the map on page 7, I just wasn't sure, is that the existing Western Rail Trail, or is that talking about an enhancement of the Western Rail Trail?
It's existing. No, it's existing.
Yeah, it's the existing. Existing, so.
Okay, because I'm not sure that the railway track goes through Frankton. It's more goes alongside the railway track on the outskirts.
Yeah, no, sorry,
of Frankton.
that's right. And in terms of the existing route, but the future projects will look to waymark or signpost a route into Frankton. But obviously, recognise that hasn't yet.
Okay, so this is more about
future.
further
Yeah.
biking routes.
Yeah, that's right.
Connect to West. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
An extension of that existing rail trail.
And, sorry, lastly, again, just a wording thing. As I said, a lovely intent in the way that the plan has been presented and researched. Page 23, upgrade the playground in Spalbrick Park. Upgrade the existing playground with an historic theme to provide a more exciting play experience. I just wondered about, in trying to link this with our existing playground of the futures plan, that we have to provide an experience in keeping with the HCC playground of the futures plan, or some reference, because it's more, our playgrounds plan is more than an exciting experience. It's bespoke. It's a part of the community. Yes, it's exciting, but in a particular way as well.
So what were your words, councillor? Was it that to provide an experience that aligns?
Yes,
with,
it aligns, or
yeah,
with the
makes sense.
council's playgrounds of the future purpose or plan. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I mean, all the changes you outline, I mean, the intent of this plan is to align as best as we can with the existing biking plan and the playgrounds policies. So
and that still retains the historical theme, so the character of the area. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. Just triggering off the precision with words theory, we're on a couple of pages, pages 64 and page 69. We have a group, paragraph 23 on page 64. We've got some people called M-A-A-O-R-I, Maori. On page 69, we have some people called, type of heritage called M-A-O-R-I, Maori. On page 69, we intertwine the Maori, M-A with a line across the A-O-R-I. I assume they're the same group.
Yes, we need to.
We've managed to use every single spelling of
No, there's a few more.
Is there some other ones, are there? All right. So are they meant to be the same thing or not, or is that just that's sloppy drafting?
It's a sloppy drafting.
Sloppy draft.
Sloppy drafting, okay. Thank you. Now,
Very good. Councillor Mallett had a very good teacher to notice those things.
you weren't my English speaker, mate.
Sorry, can I just clarify that? My understanding is he went too fast, so I'm a little bit lost exactly where he is, but MAAORI is different to MAORI, meaning two separate groups of people. So can you make sure that that's not just a broad brush? I can't find exactly where.
Yep,
we can do it.
Do they mean different things?
Not that I'm aware of, but would
They refer
no,
to,
sure.
do we have an answer? My
In the
understanding is
context
they
of
refer
this
to
plan,
two separate
meant to be the
iwis or separate.
one group.
Does anyone know?
My understanding is I think that Tainui has a different spelling of Māori to, so based on different tribes. So I think staff can take that away and just check.
Just make sure.
We'll make sure it's
In all things, A is A.
There is more information than we have
Aristotle?
here around that.
I think you heard of Aristotle.
Okay, carry on, councillor.
Okay, now getting to the substance of the thing. I have to say I'm quite disappointed with this because, and I've seen it before, it would have to be one of the most lightweight reports I've seen committed from our staff. The whole...
Is this a question?
No, it's a comment.
Well, we're in question time.
Okay, and I'll ask
Could I ask, if we were on question time, what was happening when Councillor Forsyth was rewriting the words?
So as long as we're not debating, councillor Mallett.
Yep.
Questions.
Okay, the questions I have are, has the reduction of the ability to get a vehicle into an area ever improved business? The CBD would be a classic example of where we have not been able to, when we've reduced the amount of people to get access to vehicles, reducing car parks, and the place has collapsed. Is this the same thing you think will happen to Frankton?
We're in the...
The reason I ask is because this report continually talks about increasing cycling and pedestrian ways, reducing vehicle access. In fact, you have to go about 3/4 of the way through the pictures before you get a photo of a car. So I'm wondering, what evidence do you have that reducing the ability of people to get cars into an area will improve the economy or the...
Sorry, I don't understand that the plan's not proposing to reduce the ability of cars. There's no reduction in parking proposed. In fact, Frankton's got quite sufficient parking.
Okay, we're talking about creating a car-free zone on Commerce Street.
Where are you, councillor?
Page 69, paragraph 5, suggested ideas.
Oh, that was from submitters.
Yeah,
Those
that's
aren't
suggested
included in the
ideas.
plan. They were requests from the public consultation.
Okay.
They're not in the plan.
So when it talks about pedestrian-friendly, bike-friendly, there's no suggestion we're going to be reducing the vehicles into Frankton?
No, I think in terms of bike-friendly, that's tied in with the Western Rail Trail that Council's already signed up on. Okay. And in terms of pedestrian-friendly, that's looking at improving the pedestrian experience along Commerce Street.
Okay. Another question would be then, okay, and I just would like to hear your view on this. Rototuna, Chartwell, Linden Court, the base, all extraordinarily successful shopping business centres. With all due respect, they're basically glorified car parks. They're a huge car park with a whole lot of shops around them. Have you taken that evidence that has obviously worked in the real world with people spending their own money, have you taken that evidence into account when you have proposed this plan?
That's not part of the neighbourhood plan. In terms of looking at, are you talking about retail spend or?
I'm talking about vibrant, living, growing,
yes,
exciting community.
One of the feedback we got, well, quite a lot of feedback we got from the community was they quite liked the point of distinction from the base. They liked that boutique feel and the character. They didn't want Frankton to be turned into, as you say, a large car park, quite characterless and just purely based upon large format retail.
Okay. To what extent is this plan similar to previous transformations attempted in the CBD?
This is the first type of neighbourhood plan. It's fulfilling one of the actions from the Hamilton plan to look at suburban neighbourhoods.
Wayfinding signs, pedestrian-friendly, bike-friendly, are all slogans I've heard with regard to the CBD, which has turned into a disaster. What evidence have you got in the real world that this plan will work?
Well, we would need to monitor the effectiveness of this plan. In terms of, is it effective? It hasn't even been adopted yet. I can't answer.
Where has this kind of transformation been tried and has it worked? Have you got anything in the real world that shows that this will work?
In terms of reducing cars, in terms of...
In terms of the fetish of bikes and pedestrians?
Yeah, certainly in my experience, if I look at working in the UK, there was a congestion charge that was introduced in the UK to reduce the number of vehicles and increase public transport use in the UK. It's been very successful, no downturn in terms of the performance of the central area of London. Same thing in Singapore. My own experience in Sydney, there's currently right underway right now a huge amount of public investment in terms of providing a light rail right through the middle of George Street. There's certainly no downturn in relation to the performance of the CBD. In Central City, it's become a very desirable place because of the fact that it is very pedestrian friendly and people can access it easily. There's nothing in this plan that stops people accessing Frankton by cars or indeed by any other motorised vehicle transport. It doesn't reduce the number of parking. All it's saying is that there's also other ways that you can get to Frankton, and it makes sense to tie it into the work that's been done for the Western Rail Trail.
Okay.
Just the other thing, sorry to interrupt, I was just thinking, I went to New Plymouth a few weeks ago and that seemed to be quite successful, speaking to the community.
Sorry?
New Plymouth, in terms of what they've done there with the waterfront and encouraging this biking experience. Very popular and I think increased visitor numbers.
Okay, so you've got those. So those are, and what sort of evidence have you got of that? You've just spoken to people, or have you got figures?
I just spoke to people. I didn't get any hard. I was just on a trip.
This plan was written prior to the disclosure that Forlongs was probably closing. What changes? I mean, that's a massive draw into the area. What amendments would you be making to the plan?
Look, it's a very good point. First of all I know and all the staff knows at this particular point in time is what's been disclosed in the media. Yeah. Whether or not there's an actual decision to close Forlongs, I don't know that. I think if Forlongs closes, no doubt it will have an impact on the retailing and the performance of Frankton as a retail centre. But equally, in my view, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for someone to repurpose that site, the owners, what that might look like, I'm not sure. Whether or not the plan needs to be revisited in the wake of Forlongs closing and vacating that site, that's something we need to keep a watching brief on. But I take your point. I think it is a very significant development in the future development of Frankton and how it performs as a retail centre.
It should Forlongs close. There has been discussion that it could be turned into residential. I know the Mayor's been quoted as not wanting that. What can happen to the Forlongs site in terms of district planning?
It's got a suburban centre zoning.
So what does it? Just explain that a bit.
So it can be used for retailing purposes, can be used for offices, for commercial floor space, and there can be apartments that can be developed there as well. I mean, it's subject to resource consent and approval, but that's an indication of the types of uses that would be potential repurposing of that site should Forlongs close down and demolish the buildings out of there.
Okay. On page 10 of the big spread out thing, it says, the second paragraph says, the Frankton will become an increasingly desirable suburb for families and professionals interested in an urban village atmosphere and convenient pedestrian-friendly proximity to work, education.
What page is that, Gary?
Page 10.
Thanks.
So it's on the A3 pages. Yeah. So it's the one on 10 on the spine. friendly proximity to work, education, cultural and social facilities. What evidence have you got for that? With all due respect, is that just a hope, or what, have you got evidence?
Well, no, that's an outcome, and so that's the outcome through the work of the working group in terms of what the outcomes that they wanted to see, what this plan achieved. That's an outcome that's been determined by the working group. That's provided the strategic direction for the plan.
It's an outcome that's wanted. What is it? What evidence have you got that the actions within the plan will lead to that outcome?
There's no evidence. The plan is highlighting what the people have said in terms of the community. They appreciate the benefits of Frankton's proximity to the central city, the lake and facilities. And I think in the fullness of time, it's a hope that things, interventions like the Western Rail Trail, improving wayfinding and signage, and you're already seeing residential apartments going up in places like Frankton now, so it's hoping to build upon these projects. And yes, it's an outcome that's hoped for the plan, and obviously that will need to be monitored.
So, just to be clear, so there are recommendations or actions in this that we don't know how they're going to impact, whether they're going to work or not. We're suggesting spending many millions of dollars, I assume, when this thing gets budgeted. I don't know if it's been budgeted yet. And we are suggesting spending millions of other people's dollars to achieve what might be nice outcomes. But we have no evidence that going from there to there to there, following this plan, will create these outcomes.
Yeah, I can't point to a particular piece of evidence that says if we execute all the actions in this plan, every single one of those outcomes will be achieved.
Is that responsible?
I think given that the plan is a strategic document, they've set up the working group has set out some outcomes, and the plan sets out actions that have been well thought through that are the best way to give effect to those, to derive those outcomes.
Sorry, how can you think something's well thought through when you've got no evidence? I mean, this has got lots of nice words and lots of pleasant pictures, but there's nothing to suggest that this has worked or will work. There's no. I mean, what's your fallback if it doesn't work?
Well,
what's the consequences? What's the consequences for you if it doesn't work?
I don't know what the consequences are for me. That's for a matter for outside of council. We've been asked to prepare a plan. There was a resolution by council of this committee to prepare that. We've been doing that with a working group, and we're reporting to the outcomes of that process.
Okay. Second, on the same page, under the retain and grow Frankton's unique economy, second paragraph. This is so it talks about Frankton has a unique economic mix. They make an important contribution to Hamilton's economy. Then it says there is significant potential to generate economic growth by leveraging Frankton's economic base and reputation as a supportive commercial environment for small to medium trade, family and start-up businesses. What examples have you got of that? What does that mean? Why isn't that happening already? Wouldn't the people there be doing that already?
Well, I think one of the things that signals in here is around things like the connection of the Western Rail Trail, about improvements to paving. That signals a clear direction from this organisation about that Frankton's important. And I think if there's I've seen other examples of in my working time where the council has committed to, you know, a strategic document that says this place is important, with some actions around it, or a very modest investment that sends a signal to other investors potentially, okay, well, if I go here, I know that this is an area of the city that the city is concerned about.
The word quirky comes up a couple of times. Why is that an asset? What is it that makes that? It's just as likely to turn people off as to turn people on. It's undefined.
The feedback when at the beginning of the project is we asked the community and online feedback to come up with words that they felt described their place, where they went. And as you hinted at earlier, it's not the base, it's not a large car park, and many people felt it did have a very positive attribute in being small, friendly shop holders. And as you said earlier, in some places there's a lot of start-up units in Frankton. People go there because of its location and of the benefits of being close to the central city.
So those are the things that are currently in place, those characteristics.
Yeah.
If those are the things that are in place now, why does anything need to be changed? If those are the characteristics they want to maintain,
Right.
is Frankton quote unquote working? Is it growing as it should be? What's the point of doing a plan if the quirkiness and the smallness and the friendliness of the shopkeepers?
Well, for example, I mean, when there are sites that become available, it's to recognise what's special about a place and provide for that and make sure that redevelopment in the future doesn't erode or take away what people feel valued about their place. So it's understanding our location. Neighbourhood plans are quite common in New Zealand. It's looking at smaller areas through a bigger lens and to see what people feel are special attributes about their place and providing for that in a level of detail, and also looking at projects that can help maintain that. And I think people recognise Frankton's got a lot of attributes in terms of its market, its small holders, its small industries, and the plan is looking at that and suggesting projects that people have come up with that they want the council and other stakeholders to look at going forward in the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Again, you've just sort of given a narrative of what the plan is about, but you've given no reason to suggest it's going to create growth.
I think
or vibrancy.
Yeah,
or
I think
all things
if we did nothing, I could probably say there's less likely to be growth. The plan's not committing to a certain number or figure. It's a plan that the Hamilton plan's identified is going to hopefully help, but there's no guarantee in this.
Yeah, I think it's just something we would do to continue to monitor. You're correct in that there's no certainty that this will result in the outcomes that it seeks, but this is an attempt to generate those outcomes.
Okay. On page 13, there's a nice photo. 2 people on a balcony. Excuse me. One bloke walking a dog, a guy on a bike. 2 sort of ghostly figures they are. No cars. Is that there intended to be no cars on that?
No, it's not deliberate. It's a graphic image.
Which has no meaning, in other words.
No, it's just a graphic image representing what a stylised upgrade.
2 balloons. Okay. There's a paragraph in there that's headlined Commerce Street Character Overlay. This is trying to keep that which is quirky and unique about Frankton in Frankton, I think. Is that the purpose of this?
Yes, as I said.
Include a special heritage zone?
To look at the special character of...
So, and look, I am very much a private property guy, so they can do what they want with their properties as far as I'm concerned, but are we suggesting that this special heritage zone will be a requirement, am I reading that right, of the district plan? To protect, when you say protect, you mean enforce, lock down, not able to be changed?
Well, they're your own words. The action there is to look at the built form features and the heritage features of that particular part of Frankton. What the final what that may look like is yet to be determined, and if it was to result in any change to a district plan set of provisions, we'd have to come back here and put that through to council, and only council can resolve to commence a change to the district plan.
Okay, thank you. And look, none of us can tell the future, but there has been some effort in the CBD to try and protect and blah, blah, blah. And we've seen what's happened. We've got the cars out, we've made it very hard to change a building, and suddenly everyone's found this new form of shopping. It's called the Base and Chartwell Square and Rototuna and whatnot, and some people say we have a crisis in the CBD. In Frankton, is there a crisis? Is there a reduction in, is turnover dropping there?
I wouldn't say that there's a crisis.
Crisis is too big a word.
I would say that all this plan is doing is trying to improve that part of the city. It's not saying it's to be improved at the expense of any other place.
Okay.
or two, that all business must now be directed to Frankton. It's just saying that this committee resolved to prepare a plan for this part of the city to improve it, and this is the outcome of that process.
To the extent this plan incentivises and requires a standing still, let's lock in, and I'm overstating this a bit, sorry, but let's celebrate our heritage, let's stay the same. Are we locking in a form of doing business and a form of retailing and a form of commerce that's past its due date, as some might suggest we're done with within the CBD? And there are other parts of the city who have sprung free and are doing what the market wants and are just knocking, knocking the hell out of the CBD in the Frankton?
No.
What's your evidence for that, even though I've given you some really good examples where that has
Well, because nothing in this plan precludes the success of any other part of the city. There's nothing statutory in this document. There's nothing that there's nothing in here that changes what building owners can do if they're building. There's nothing here that changes what people can use their buildings for. It sets a framework to improve this part of the city. It doesn't do it at the expense of any other location, and it doesn't lock down any other part of the city.
And how much of this do you think will be funded by the City Council?
I think some of these are, some of the funding decisions around here are yet to be determined. They would need to be the subject of contemplation through the next LTP round.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yes, my question perhaps follows on from Councillor Mallett, who indicated, I think in a statement around one of his questions, that we were likely to spend millions and millions of dollars on this plan. On page 22, you've got the implementation and timeframes, although nothing suggested around paragraph 27 around financial and resourcing implications. When you suggest starting immediately, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items there, is that, are these projects, assuming that the plan gets approved today, are these items that will fit into next year's annual plan?
Well, some of those are currently underway at the moment.
Yeah, I see the rail trail.
Rail trail is one.
Yep.
The Better Business Service Plan is a project that has commenced and is underway. The resolving the district plan appeals, like that's, as you know, is an ongoing piece of work. It's been going since 2014. And these other ones, say for example, market business opportunity, that's for us to prepare some documentation around what Frankton is, etc. So these some of these are already underway.
So the site plans and the beautification plan for Commerce Street, they're already underway, or are they likely, if they're not underway, to get started before June or after June, in which case they'll be in next year's annual plan?
There's, in terms of the footpaths, that would be underway in the next 3 to 4 years as part of the transportation maintenance budget.
Sorry, which one was that?
The beautification plan to upgrade.
Okay,
footpaths.
so that's in the short term, 1
Yes.
to 3 years,
Yep.
rather than the start immediately. I'm just trying to get a sense of, I think these plans are great, but
A point of order, sorry Rob, the beautification plan is in the start immediately, isn't it?
yeah, that's what I'm coming to, Gary. Yeah, I'm just.
But didn't you just say what?
Yeah, that's why I'm asking the question.
It's going to start immediately, but it would be a rolling programme of stage maintenance improvements over 3 to 4 years.
Okay. So, but there'll be some costs associated with getting that plan underway now, as well as the sites plan too.
The sites plan will be part of staff costs in terms of future work programmes, and certainly there'll be some synergies and overlap with the heritage plan that you've discussed.
So have we costed, I guess the question I'm coming to is, have we got the start immediately work that hasn't already started or is not somewhere otherwise covered by existing budgets? Have we got costings for the new parts? And I suspect 2 of the new parts are the beautification plan, Commerce Street, and the Maori sites plan, which is on the top of page 22 to start immediately.
I don't have an estimate for those 2 particular items available.
But they would start before June or after June?
Well, pending whatever the committee resolves today, that my assumption is that the Maori sites plan would be work that would start before the end of the financial year.
Before the end of the fund.
Yeah.
And so have we got that budgeted for?
No, I'm sorry, I don't have that
Okay,
figure to hand.
okay.
But the rest of those items are ones that are currently underway. So, the Better Business Services Plan, that's an old...
Are we looking at millions of dollars, as Councillor Mallett has suggested? Or, are these, have we got any sort of idea of what the cost
Look, I think definitely for some of these longer term items, we're talking about millions of items over. Look at
the 1 to 3 years.
I think even the long term stuff. Even if I look at Hall Street Overbridge, they're not cheap items. So I think yes, for some of those items, some of these no.
Okay.
But some of these other activities in 1 to 3 years will need to be estimated and factored in as part of the long term planning.
As part of plans, yeah. Okay, thank you.
But any big ticket item would come to, in the longer term, would come to council with a full business plan like anything else and be put up against long-term plans or annual plans.
That's correct.
Same as we do for other stuff. Are there any other questions?
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
Where's the money coming from?
Well, for those immediate projects, they're within existing budgets. That's work that's already commenced prior to this plan being developed. So they're coming from existing allocations through the LTP that you approved in 2015.
But we've established this is going to cost millions of dollars.
Well,
there's nothing in the 10-year plan.
No, that's right. That's what so for some of those items, for them to be delivered, will need to be the subject of further decisions of either this council or subsequent councils through an LTP process.
So we've got a 10-year plan in place. We've allocated our money for the next 10 years, and then a report like this could come in and jump the queue.
The LTP was approved before this piece of work was completed.
I think to be helpful here, Luke, you're probably referring to existing operational and renewals budgets across a range of the activities where some of these relatively small elements may be accommodated within existing maintenance or renewal programs. I think that's quite different to the substantial items, which will be the subject of a separate budget requested through an LTP process. So, for example, streetscape maintenance, there may be some monies in there for repainting of street lights or repainting some furniture, those sorts of things, which would be an operational budget, which would sit within Chris's area. In fact, Chris may be able to stand up.
So wasn't Franklin entitled to that money before this plan, if it was in existing budgets? Are you saying that Franklin wasn't getting its share?
I'll let Chris answer.
So Councillor, I can just talk to 2 of the items. Obviously, the Western Rail Trail is funded, and we had a paper to Finance Committee the other day about delegation for contracts, and we're going out to tender. But for us in the transport, we have an urgent need for renewals of footpaths, so the cobblestones are sort of beyond their sort of useful life. We've held back sort of waiting for this plan to come together, so when we do the footpath upgrades that we can integrate with this plan in the community. But we have renewal funding over sort of now and the next 3 to 4 years. We don't have it all in 1 year, but just a rolling program of footpath renewals. So the funding we would have would allow some pretty nice asphalt type treatments, and we just want to work with the group to roll out something pretty nice, but it's just part of our renewal program for the footpaths.
So the money was always there?
The money...
Franklin was going to get this anyway?
The money was always there for renewals of footpaths. We've turned them over a couple of times, and we've eked out as much life as we can, but they are getting to the end of their useful life. And when you do pretty substantive work like footpath renewals, there are opportunities for bins and street poles and other stuff that just part and parcel of that work. So that is one opportunity that's part of existing budgets that we'd like to integrate with this plan once it's established.
So Franklin was always going to get this money?
Correct, for that particular one, yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor McPherson?
Yeah, just in relation to people living in the area, and there's a few references in here, not many. My observation of the rejuvenation of inner suburbs and cities has been when you can get more people living there, you have more activity and more small businesses and other businesses are attracted, etc., etc. You don't be rocket scientists to work that out. Apart from working with real estate agents to promote Frankton, I'm not sure what else is proposed to actually encourage people living in the area. My observation of Frankton at the moment is that slowly the residential areas closest to existing businesses are being eaten up. They're becoming offices for businesses and then bold for new business units and things like that. If you look at that whole area around Empire Street, for instance, there's one area there. It's also happening over the other side in towards Frankton School, across the other side there. So what sort of regulatory changes are you talking about that might help encourage Forlongs to morph into apartments? Or, or you know, it's a lot easier now to use an old house as a business.
Yeah, look, it's a really great point, and I think without having people in an area as it regenerates, it may not work to its optimum possibility. So, the underlying zoning of the town centre, the commercial part of it allows for apartments, and you would have seen recently some apartments have been developed down there. Andrew Yeoman's group has done that, the village quarter down there. So apartments are a land use which is provided for in the district plan. As I said, I think one of the opportunities that may come through with if Forlongs do move is an opportunity for the city to maybe work with the landowner on that site, depending on what their aspirations are, you know. But the actions in here are mainly, they are focused on that Commerce Street area around where the heart of Frankton is. There's you know, it acknowledges that the area is surrounded by some very historic suburbs, but there's nothing in here else that sort of to catalyse additional residential development.
So it's sort of a plan of hope, more than reality in that subject area. I'm not saying
in relation to the residential component, there's less emphasis on that, definitely.
Because the commercial drivers seem to be mostly in the other direction, away from residential development.
Yep.
Thanks.
Councillor King.
So the apartments on the corner of Hall and Lake, the new apartments, with retail underneath them.
Talking about the Andrew Yeoman's development?
They're brown buildings, brown brick
down
buildings.
near the petrol station.
About 3 stories high.
Yeah.
Under our new district plan, could they go in there?
Well, I mean, it's subject to resource consent, but apartments above the ground floor are provided for in that zone, so it's subject to resource consent.
So under our new district plan, in that location, could that development go ahead?
It's a possibility, yes.
With retail?
Yes, it is. Retail, because the zoning was, is.
Now, under the new plan?
Under the zoning right now, it's a suburban centre zoning.
Under the industrial zoning, we could have retail underneath?
It's not industrial zoning there. That particular piece of land is not industrial zoning.
What zone is it?
It's suburban centre, B5.
On that side of the road? It's not?
Oh, actually, so I stand corrected.
It's industrial zoned land. So could we put in developments? This is all rah-rah, sounds really exciting. So in these areas that have been zoned industrial, are we allowed to put retail underneath and double-storied apartments on top?
Under the current provisions, and there are appeals at the moment seeking to provide for retail uses in the industrial zone, but the decisions version of the industrial zone doesn't provide for retail uses.
So that development couldn't go there under the new plan?
I'd have to confirm the exact zoning, so I'm sorry, I thought it was a business 5 zoning, but I'd need to confirm that.
I think the site you're referring to in terms of that specific, the brown brick development, under the new plan, that the change of zoning that's subject to appeals currently, but in a suburban centre zoning, which would include
It's not a suburban centre zoning, it's an industrial zoning.
So industrial zone doesn't provide for ground floor retail under the proposed district plan, but it certainly would allow in that area under the proposed plan potentially apartments above. There is, in terms of Frankton zoning, Frankton's got the largest suburban centre zone in the city, some 36 hectares, so there's a lot of capacity, and that includes Mr. Forlong's site for a business zoning, which does provide for retail on the ground floor. So we certainly wouldn't want to see it sprawl out into the industrial zones.
You would want to?
No, because the idea is you try and concentrate for all the reasons we've discussed, your retail premises close to the centre of the village. And as I just said, the suburban centre in Frankton is already substantially large. It's the biggest suburban centre in the city. It's got a lot of capacity there, so we certainly wouldn't want to allow retail to go elsewhere.
So all this talk that's come up several times today about the fantastic subdivision that's happened on that corner couldn't actually go back in again in the future in that location?
Look, I'd need to confirm the actual zoning with you. I don't have that information right here. I'm a bit reluctant to give you a definitive answer on that until I'd cited the documents. I'd want to cite the actual plan provisions in the map before confirming that with you.
When could you have that, Luke?
Well, I know, so surely, Deborah, do you know? On that side of the road, is it industrial or is it suburban centre?
So you're talking about Andrew Young's development?
The brown, new ghetto-type buildings that are up on the corner there.
I'm looking at the plan map.
It's industrial.
So in that case, the development there would, under the current provisions, it's the retail component is not provided for.
So what we're being told is fantastic, couldn't happen again?
No, it's not at that location. But as Paul has indicated too, there's in other parts of Frankton, in the business suburban centre zoning, that development or development of that nature is provided for, and that's consistent with the other answers that I've provided today.
Do you fear that this type of development with double-storey apartments on top of retail could become the slums of the future?
No, it's fairly...
No backyard, nowhere to park your boats, nowhere for the kids to play.
Look, that's individual owners and residents will make the choices about where they want to live, but it's not atypical to see that form of development in commercial areas.
Have those apartments sold at good prices at high rates?
I don't have that information. I can't provide that to you at this particular point. I'm happy to provide it to you as a question on notice, but I don't have it here with me in terms of the sales performance of that particular development.
So what we're being told is what we want on the other side of the road in the suburban centre zone is that type of development. That's what council is encouraging.
In the district plan, in the suburban centre zoning, commercial, that is office, and retail uses and residential uses are provided for. You need to get a resource consent.
And that type of mixed-use development is the type of thing that you'd like in the suburban centre of Frankton?
It's not what I'd like. I'm telling you what is provided for in the district plan. You've asked me what's provided, and I'm telling you those are the uses that are provided. I have no view on what I would like, and that's not my role.
Thank you, Luke. You've answered well.
Thank you.
Right. There are no further questions. I'm happy to move the report, the staff recommendation on page 63. Just wanted to clarify just when and how the reporting back will come back. I think that you're working on a collaborative reporting back of strategies and plans, etc. So this will be included in that when that comes back to council at some stage?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, great, thank you. So I'll move the staff recommendation on page 63. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Oh, yes, and that will include Councillor Forsyth's changes as well. Those edits and you picked up, didn't you? Yeah.
What about the spelling of Maori?
Could include that. That's been
And
picked
that's
up
been
as
noted
well.
as well.
Yeah. So this will come back to which council meeting? The March one with those
Yes.
changes incorporated. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Look, I think that this has been a long time coming, and I think it is a good plan, and it is a strategy full of aspirations and outcomes that the council has worked on with the working group and focus group. And my first time on, I guess my journey through this was my first time on council. A car race had been signed up for Frankton, and a lot of promises were made to that community around just some of the simple things that are included in this plan, like nicer plants and replacement of footpaths in a timely manner and street furniture and all those kinds of things. But also, actually, the council of the day promised a lot more to Frankton, and they didn't deliver it. And when I came on council, I challenged the council, and with their support, we did a very tiny beautification plan for Frankton then, and that it was well received. But I mean, honestly, that was fixing up dented rubbish bins and peeling paint and the real basic things for the for Frankton, putting up some nice Frankton signs. So this plan for me is about enhancing and embracing what's already there. And I think as a city, we're very lucky to have two special character areas in the city. We have Hamilton East, which the plan has started already for that, and we have Frankton. And I would say to those councillors that may vote against this plan, don't underestimate the passion of the Frankton people. And when I say the Frankton people, I do mean that the residents, the owners of the heritage, historical railway cottages that came to the open day and gave submissions, and people like Barry Lafferty who are in the audience, people like Terry Forlong, who has had a 70-year history with Frankton and contributed a huge amount to the community, and for that I know Frankton will always be grateful. For all of the business owners that I've certainly had a lot to do with, and I know that my West Ward councillors, Councillor Gallagher and Councillor McPherson and Councillor Wilson, have had a lot to deal with over the years for some good memories and some challenging memories around the Frankton market. These are people that have owned their buildings and their businesses in Frankton for 15, 20, 30, 35 years. They are invested in this area, and they are looking to us to take a role in protecting and enhancing what is special, and Councillor Mallet, what is quirky. And quirky was the name that they gave to us. We didn't come up with that. We didn't come up with special character area. They've always said it's special and it has character. And that's built on the foundation of those people that have been there for 20, 30 and 40 years. It's built on the foundation of the likes of Terry Forlong, of the likes of the Griffin's Biscuit Factory, of Huttons, of the Laffertys, of the Jolly House, of Major Cadell, of so many people and so many stories that are more than just bricks and mortar and roading and district plans and everything else that I know you're going to hear from around the table. So many more stories to tell from Frankton, and I do think it is this city's role to protect that and enhance that, and we're doing so, I believe, with a strong blessing of the community. So I urge you to support the plan. Any further speakers? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Look, can I congratulate you and your panel on producing an excellent plan. I acknowledge Barry Lafferty for his excellent book on Frankton, and I was delighted, Chair, to see on pages 12 and 13 a building that I once owned but restored, and today it is still a building that I'm very proud of because it captured a beautiful classic lines of an early 20s building, and it continues today. It is an excellent plan, as I say, but I do have one hesitancy, and Councillor Mallet touched on that earlier when he talked about the Forlongs situation. And I've always thought about Frankton as Forlongs and Forlongs as Frankton. And I know, Chair, that you've mentioned a whole range of other heritage aspects, the railway cottages, the Jolly House, the car museum that I love. There's a whole lot of other things that do make up Frankton. But I suppose the outcome of Forlongs is critical. And I say that in the sense, it doesn't matter what we debate in the chamber. If government yesterday introduced new legislation on illegal pot or legal pot or whatever, we would respond to that change. And I'm afraid that I do think that what is missing for me in the report, and this is not a criticism for the work up to date, it's the fact that just 10 days ago, Forlongs dropped the bombshell that they may close. Now, we still don't know what that decision is. And I'm just wondering out aloud whether we should be moving the plan forward without any acknowledgement of Forlongs in the negative sense, because in the document we do talk about Forlongs in a favourable context. And I think any plan to be current and up to date should reflect something that we had no control over. And I think that there are questions in the future about what that might bring, and we still don't know. Terry Forlong hasn't advised us. It's his business. And when he makes that decision, then I'm sure that we need to be in the know in terms of thinking about what might happen, not just to one block or 2 blocks, but a 3rd block. It is a significant piece of Frankton. And the future for that site, whatever it may be, could change the nature of Frankton. I don't have an insight into that. But what I do worry myself about is that we have an excellent plan, exclude Forlongs, an excellent plan, and Forlongs have come along and for their own reasons, and you have to respect those reasons, have decided they may or may not continue trading. I personally would prefer to have another month up my sleeve to understand that. And even then, once we understand that, what might that do to change any thinking in the plan? Because if you take the Forlongs part out of it, absolutely excellent plan, happy to support it. But I am worried that this is a significant decision by Forlongs that potentially has a significant impact on the Frankton plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further speakers? Councillor McPherson.
For the second time in a short while, very short while today, I find myself mostly agreeing with the Deputy Mayor. And I'm wondering that if he wanted to move a motion to hold this back for a round of meetings or 2 rounds of meetings to allow a check to be done on the Forlong situation, I would certainly be willing to second that and support it. So I'll sort of leave that up to him there. But look, I think it's a good start, the plan. Unfortunately, at the moment, I still would review this plan as a sort of a coffee table book for me. I like the pictures, I like the concepts. I'm waiting for the meat. I'm waiting for the bricks and mortar and the other sort of changes to come out of it. We've acknowledged, there's been acknowledgement, it's lacking a bit in the terms of accommodation, that side of things. It's focusing on quite a narrow part of Frankton. I don't have a problem with what it says about that part of Frankton. I think it's certainly encouraging that the local community has always been involved actually in plans for the future of Frankton, unlike some other areas where it's council coming in to do it for people. This is more the community views coming forward here, but it doesn't have much meat on the bones at the moment, and clearly in terms of what Forlongs are going to do, that could have a dramatic impact on the centre, on the central Commerce Street part of Frankton that we're mostly talking about. And I don't think it would hurt us to wait a little bit and maybe rejig the plan or make changes that sort of follow what their intentions are or acknowledge what their intentions are once they're known.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further speakers?
Yep.
Councillor King, then Tooman, then Mallet.
In 1986, or before that even, I remember riding around in Frankton on my bike in my shorts. Martin was, I used to look up to Martin, he was a few years older than me. I think he had a set of longs by then, Martin, but we were actually brought up in Frankton. In 1986, I remember council opened the Middle Street overbridge, effectively cutting off the main street of Frankton. This was a big change. Up until then, Commerce Street was probably more commerce done in Commerce Street than any other area of Hamilton, places to pump. Council, since then, council's made Commerce Street one way, widened the footpaths, taken away parking, put in play equipment, seating, street decorations, which today we call art, made it pedestrian friendly, but also made it difficult for vehicles to get in and out of. All the things that council have done have reduced the vibrancy of the area and made it so buses no longer have access to the area. Council introduced markets in 1987 to try and breathe some life into Frankton, which further damaged the vibrancy for the shop owners of Commerce Street. There has been a continuous demise of Frankton, with shops closing and maintenance to buildings nearly non-existent. It seems everything council has done adds to the demise of Frankton. And here we go again, fiddling away. Councillors may feel good about it because we are doing something, while those who live in the area may well suffer again. What suburban centre in New Zealand has a functioning main street that is not on a thoroughfare? This plan is not just about Commerce Street, but also about the railway cottage that we put heritage status on in the district plan in 1989. When this was announced, it was said that there would be no council regulatory planning costs for the residents, but this has proved not to be the case. There has been a cost for people living in the railway houses, which aren't in other areas in most of Hamilton. The Frankton plan should not end up costing tenants, residents and property owners more money for compliance. What we should be doing is looking at a low-cost way of assisting in this area. This means less red tape. This plan says just that. But it also says we're going to put a historical protection area over other parts of the area, which will add more costs. This is going to cost with more rules and regulations, planning consents, restrictive zoning and heritage listings. It just costs more. If you want to do anything to your railway house, you have to put in a resource consent and pay for it yourself. This plan is proposing expanding that area. If we are serious about fixing the Frankton suburban centre, as with our CBD in town here, we would address the rating differential, the rating differential where property owners pay a ratio of $1.70, at least $1.70 for every dollar that residential property owners pay. But no, elected members won't do that. It's election year. And this would mean residential rates would have to increase to keep the same rate take. That won't be a vote winner. Does the plan for Frankton conflict with other plans or policy council has? We have seen with the Central City Transformation Plan, which seeks to reduce the Central City CBD, or the Central District, whereas the new district plan, so the Central City Transformation Plan is proposing to shrink the CBD, whereas the new district plan, which isn't even fully operative yet, is looking at opening up the CBD. And interestingly, that's under the same leadership. Both those policies have been put in place under the same leadership over the last 5 years. I'm talking about political leadership. Will the same type of conflict happen in Frankton? Under Mayor Hardacre's regime, in the last 2 years, we have plans coming out of our ears. We've got the Hamilton plan, we've got the bike plan, the playgrounds of the future plan, the zoo master plan, the river plan, the Ferrybank development plan, the Victoria on the River project, the Central City Transformation Plan, the Frankton Plan, the Libraries Plan, the Business Improvement District Review, the Museum Plan, the Heritage Plan, the Hamilton East Neighbourhood Plan, the Central City Safety Plan, the Youth Action Plan, and believe it or not, Pooches on the Park Plan. And then when you go to the Hamilton Plan, we've also got a list of other plans that haven't been addressed yet. We've got the municipal endowment policy, we've got the investment strategy, we've got the economic development agenda, the infrastructure plan, the event structure, the beautification plan, the development contributions policy, which is being looked at, the open spaces plan, the regional sports plan, the arts agenda, and the regional facilities plan. That's another 11 on top of the 17. And this has all been under this council with us around this table. The first 17 we've already put up, the other 11 stays in the Hamilton plan are still coming. This is a multi-headed behemoth. I believe these plans have poured out of the Mayor's office at a rate never seen in the history of this council. It's okay having a vision, but we don't have the money in the 10-year plan to do these. It is a vision for Hamilton with no substance, to make certain elected members feel good, get publicity, but most of them will never get traction. There is so much going on, so many plans, that the public aren't even responding to the consultation process as they have in the past. The public have got apathetic. This council is cleverly manipulating the people of Hamilton into thinking that they're going to receive a gold-plated, upgraded city, which is never going to happen. The money's just not there.
Councillor Tooman.
I can well remember pre the opening of the Massey Street overbridge, which Councillor King has referred to. And if we didn't have the Massey overbridge today, of course, what would actually be happening to the Dinsdale? Looking at the story of Frankton, which was on pages 4 and 5, it's quite fascinating actually, because it gives the dates when Frankton actually started to develop. And I go back to 1888, where it says that patients arrived by train to go to the nearby Waikato hospitals. They were trundled on luggage trolleys to the northern edge of the lake, and they were then rowed across the lake to the hospital by a house surgeon. Now I wonder, if we'd done nothing, whether or not house surgeons would still be rowing patients across the lake to go to the Waikato hospital. Very good idea. So if we don't actually do something, nothing's going to happen. And when you look at that huge hospital up there on the hill, which is, I understand, one of the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere, and we'd still be having people arriving there across the Hamilton Lake in a rowboat. Come on, let's get real about this whole thing. It's a plan, I think, which has got a future for Frankton. And, of course, we have people around this table who are totally reliant upon the motor vehicle to actually get them to the shop, to park outside that shop which they want to do some shopping at. And I think in this day and age, when you look at the congestion in Auckland, we do not want to have that. So let's do something now and make Frankton the attractive place in which it should be. I definitely support this plan.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mallett.
Slow boat to China.
Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. Look, I wouldn't even receive the report. It's so full of overblown proposals that are based on very, very little real-life evidence. In fact, if you want real-life evidence, it's in our own CBD, where we've had numerous council promoted revitalisation plans. We've spent millions and millions of dollars, and all that has happened is that we now have a CBD which needs a proposed district plan that has to protect the CBD as if it were a cripple. Now, this is not what we want for Frankton. This is not what Frankton wants. It's not what Frankton needs, and it's not what Frankton deserves. This plan is the sort of document that you'd vote for only if you're spending someone else's money. Thank you.
Councillor Gallagher.
Yes, first of all, like some other councillors around this table, obviously I lived there as a child, a teenager, and raised there, and went to scouts in school and all that and watch TV in the Forlongs window when there was a speaker on the first TV, seriously. I pick up the Deputy Mayor's point. I think this is a recommendation to full council. I suspect by the time this next comes up, we may have a clear idea, and I think at that point it may or may not be requirement. And I certainly, well, philosophically, I don't necessarily see eye to eye, I think, with Councillor King and Councillor Maddett in terms of plans. I want to certainly acknowledge Councillor King's own background and knowledge and involvement in the business community. I just want to perhaps remind colleagues that this wasn't something that, a vision document, if you like, that just Councillor O'Leary and planners and myself sort of thought up. And I also want to absolutely, when Barry Lafferty, as I said, writes his next book in 30 years' time on the history of Frankton, and those of you who haven't had a look at it, go read it, because it gives you some really good context. I want to sort of just pay absolute tribute to Councillor O'Leary's hard work and tenacity and her ability to link with a range of people in the Frankton community. So this is a product, so when you're criticising this document, you are criticising the working party, including Mr Forlong, including the manager of the Hamilton markets, including a range of other members of the small business community, heritage, etc., etc. So this is a product that came from a working group that you appointed. And I will say to council colleagues that when you appoint a group and they come back with something you don't particularly like, you may be a little bit more perhaps diplomatic, maybe, in your response. I actually think it's actually quite a good document, and as you'd expect from someone like me, I sort of quite like plans, and I like a context. You have the Hamilton plan, and I can hardly wax lyrical about Lake Whaiwhakariki and how it fits in with this plan, and then suddenly reject this one. I've got to be consistent, and being consistent is they all, to me, dovetail in giving a general, incremental, cautious direction for our city over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And we do get runs on the board, like the rail trail is a very important run on the board. We do observe with plans, with the help of plans, sometimes in spite of plans, sometimes in spite of district plans, there's some really good, vibrant commercial development. So the other day I went for a good walk and I happened to just coincidentally, purely coincidentally, call it the Good George Brewery in King Street. And, you know, it just reminded me, it used to be the old Scoutle. I think Gordon was one of the leading members of the Scout community at the time. And what it evolves into, right? So there's a balance, and I acknowledge that, you know, that's about entrepreneurs, and I do hear closely Councillor King in terms of, you know, making it easy to do business and trying to get the balance between good planning and vision and the so-called red tape. With irony, I look at the streetscape, and I think it's a great thing where we're talking about assisting people painting houses in a streetscape. But currently, the rules in this city is that you can have a property that is occupied by a whole lot of stuff that is not helpful for the neighbouring houses, all right? You know, we talk about the red tape of council. What rights do we give to property owners to do exactly what they like in their property, to the extent you can't sell a house next door, potentially, because no one wants to buy, you know? So there's all of those balances. Delighted that this also acknowledges Frankton potentially as the future major stop point for the commuter rail to Auckland, which I believe will come at some stage. All this is, I think, Councillor McPherson, yes, it is a kind of a coffee table book. It's a good coffee table book, and in the sense that it actually talks about, with this Frankton community, aspiration on their behalf. And it's not just Commerce Street. You know, Frankton community is, look at the map with respect, it's the wider area. And I think it gives us a good direction. The telling point will be two things. One, how we can, and I get Councillor King's notes of caution and warning, how we can get some runs on the board within our constrained budget, how we can actually be innovative, how we can actually try and get some runs on the board without spending a whack of dough, and I think we can actually do that. And the other big thing is we do have to, and Councillor King is right, we have to keep our district scheme under constant review.
because as I've alluded to at workshops, I think there are still, you try, then you suddenly see unintended consequences or consequences you weren't quite across. And a district plan is always a living document, okay? We don't hibernate for the next 5 or 10 years. And if there are areas where suddenly we should have the courage to say, oops, we collectively didn't get that exactly right, and we should be obviously wanting to develop that. So without further ado, I will be supporting this as a very good guide, future direction, and obviously the real test will be, and the test of faith with the Frankton community won't be just about the red tape, which is important, I get that. The test of faith is what we're going to do to invest some of the rates that they pay back into their neighbourhood.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy, just before I go to Councillor Pascoe, Deputy Mayor, you have already spoken. Are you going to put forward?
I wanted to signal an amendment.
Yep.
And I just wanted to explain that I do support the plan, but I support a plan with updated information reflecting Forlong. So my my amendment would be...
Sorry, Deputy Mayor, sorry. I'm just catching up. You've already spoken, though. You needed to signal during debate.
It's a procedural
that
one,
you... Is it a procedural motion or is it an amendment?
To lie on the table.
It's a direct amendment.
Yeah.
But Gordon, you overtly said about why. Yeah. I mean, you've expressed your views. Everyone knows quite clearly that you would want to wait until the full instance.
Chair, because...
So just so I'm clear, democracy, the Deputy Mayor has spoken. He didn't indicate that he was going to, because I know you can speak during debate and then you can indicate that you will.
Standing orders would not allow a member who has spoken to the motion to move an amendment, Madam Chair.
Well, I'd like to move...
Sorry, Chair,
Could I move suspension of standing orders for this one particular item? I believe there is a precedent in that.
So that's
to allow...
procedural, yeah, so that's a procedural motion. So what's your procedural motion,
That the standing orders be suspended to allow the Deputy Mayor to propose an amendment on the subject that he signalled an interest in during his speech.
So what standing order is that?
I'm not sure, but it'll be the same one that we used the other day.
Well, it would be similar, but not the same.
It's called expediency.
Okay, just a moment. Okay, so Councillor McPherson, that's, what does it say? Oh, so that's for democracy, that's 3.7.12.
That was the one, yep.
Any member other than previous movers or seconders in a debate may then propose a further amendment to substantive, no, that's not the right one.
Angela, maybe someone else wants to move it, because we shouldn't be putting aside standing orders just willy-nilly, should we? If maybe someone else can help out and offer to move it.
Okay, so how about we were going to break for afternoon tea at 3:30 anyway, so let's break for afternoon tea until 3:45, and then perhaps someone can talk to the Deputy Mayor to sort that. Thank you.